Welcome back, though. It's your boy Captain Diesel, the illusory Professor E, King of the Comics, Ethan Murphy, and
You're listening to the Then and Now podcast.
Pinky. All right.
y'all. This is going to be a fun episode. We're kind of doing our reviews kind of similarly to our POIs now, where we're going to be discussing a particular topic or trope or whatever else. But well, like we normally do, we always tend to teeter off into a tangent over a particular example that we bring up. So I thought it just makes sense for us to actually bring forth an example to teeter off into that would make sense according to whatever we were talking about. So as we were going through the chat the other day, I was like, "Hey, y'all, what do we want to talk about?" Ethan brings forth the bright idea to discuss fantasy. He said in fantasy and anime. I thought we should expand that out to be fantasy and I guess the industry, quote unquote, in general. At least from my perspective, I've seen a lot of fantasy content being pushed out the last 2 to 3 years between film, TV shows, video games, and everything in between. There's a Dungeons and Dragons movie last year. There's a couple fantasy video games. There's that whole Wheel of Time came out on Amazon, as well as the Lord of the Rings series that we thought was abysmal. So this is Percy Jackson, yeah, that is fantasy technically, yeah. So there's been a lots of fantasy content that's been coming out. And I wanted to ask you guys, why do you guys think it's been such a boom as of late? Fantasy has always been a popular genre of stuff, but it's been like really prevalent lately. And I'll leave the floor open to either one of you who wants to take it up first.
Go ahead, ready.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess it's only fair I go first because I really kind of brought this topic up. It is something that I thought about while we were playing, ironically enough, Baldur's Gate 3 together, like why it is that there's such a boom in fantasy content, also interest in the world of fantasy. And Otis said then the same thing that I was thinking is because it's a combination of escapism plus fantasy, plus essentially wish fulfillment. Lots of us want to be more powerful in some capacity. Lots of us, especially those who are in the nerd community of any kind, we wish at one time we were younger that we could be the most popular person, who could be more powerful, who could do all kinds of crazy things in a world, could have a harem that was chasing after us, we could, battle monsters and seem really cool. And so watching all these isekais, watching all these fantasy series or movies or playing these fantasy games, it kind of lets us indulge in all those aspects, all those wants and desires from before. And they don't really change. They don't really go anywhere as you get older. They just kind of change in some capacity. I don't necessarily have the same desires I had when I was a kid, but I still have a 9 to 5 job now, and I have other things. And there are plenty of times where my mind wander, where I wish I could, escape to a greater world, doing greater things and a bigger adventure. So that's why I think it may be more of a boom of it for it now. People are still want to have that escapism.
Otis?
Yeah, I fully agree. My take is just a little bit darker than E's.
Oh God.
World is kind of trash, so you want to go to somewhere where it's cool and it's not here. So you go to the fantasy thing, and that's something it's already been familiar to people. And with nerd culture becoming more pop culture, it's just been something that everybody's getting into, and there's different nuggets of it for people too. Like, I mean, all the way from Harry Potter to Lord of the Rings, that's a really big spectrum of fantasy, but it's all fantasy, and somebody's got a fixation on it.
Yeah, it's that I guess that, like for the term, that Alice Wonderland effect. So where you go from this meek regular world, and we kind of seen it with shows similarly, like with Zom 100, where people go through these the everyday jobs that are monotonous, that are boring, and whatever else. And when you get a chance of quote unquote freedom or a chance to reinvent yourself, because I know for me, you kind of get that in small doses, kind of when you're growing up, going from middle to high school, from high school to college, and from college to wherever else you're going. Each time you get to reinvent yourself in this new environment that has infinite possibilities, and usually those possibilities kind of sink down into the average expectation at some point in time, and that's usually when the meekness starts to begin. But I know for me personally, I think it's the aspect of like new horizons that people have going forward.
That's a really good point. When you actually, I'm sorry, I'm gonna cut you off. That's a really good point.
No, go ahead.
No, like you said, when you're going from either grade school to middle school or middle school to high school, it's like you said, people often literally say, "quote It's a chance to reinvent yourself." People get different outfits. They try a different haircut. I mean, it's pretty much it's like if you make a ability cut, it's a character customization screen, more or less. So yeah, it's true.
Literally. And that'd be the case. I wanted to try to teeter a little bit into the example we had with Shangri la Frontier. Ethan, why is it that you wanted to use Shangri la Frontier as the example, first and foremost?
Sure, because I feel like Shangri la Frontier in a lot of ways is meant to be almost it's a celebration or homage to the whole genres or worlds of fantasy, both series and games. Obviously, things like Sword Art Online or Final Fantasy, all those different types of things. Uh, but then also, it's kind of being subversive of that because it's so aware of those tropes. Essentially, I mean, for those who
Hmm.
don't know, those who haven't seen or even heard of the series or manga Shangri La Frontier, it's literally about a person in our world, more or less, the regular world, who is like this expert gamer that only plays trash games. And then one day he decides to pretty much play essentially was like I guess the massive MMO like slash Elden Ring type of video game, and he gets
Right.
fully sucked into it, and it's kind of watching his adventure almost exclusively in the video game world and see how different it is. But it's a lot of fun to actually see what it would be like to essentially live out your fantasies completely in a video game if you were an expert gamer. So from the from the viewer's standpoint, you get the fantasize what it's like to be an expert gamer, and from the character standpoint,
Hmm.
is his fantasy being actually inside this world.
Otis, can you speak to the allure of the series a little bit? Because I think when I first watched the series, you were the immediate first person I thought about. I'm like, oh, this main character is Otis. This is hilarious.
Yeah, I relate to the series heavily, just because I mean Sunraku is like how he approaches games is how I approach games. Like all the games that I play the most, I hate them. Right? Like I I I hate 2K. I hate 2K. I
Oh
hate
man.
Destiny. I can't stand Diablo. Play them all the time. That's like if I'm turning on a game to blow off some steam, that's what I'm doing, and that's what Sunraku does. Like he clearly hates the games, but he has to complete them, and then seeing
Hmm.
him like get hooked onto a new game, I know that feeling. I just got that feeling just this past weekend with Power World because that shit is gas. Um, but yeah, like it's a very relatable show if you're a gamer. If you were a gamer and an anime fan, this is just what you should turn on. You're gonna find some nugget of relatability to it between the different characters because like the characters in the show in the real world are just like archetypes of different people that game, and then their characters in the game are archetypes of different tropes and fantasy. So like it's almost double dipping with the tropes there, and
Hmm.
I think it's really well done. I mean, it gives you a little bit of slice of life, but it's a lot of action with literally no stakes. Like you don't have like it's not like SAO where if you die, you die in real life, or a real fantasy world where again if you're in a dungeon, you get snacked on by a dragon, you're gone. This is just a video game. They're having a good time finding a challenge that was unique to just this player, and they're
Hmm.
playing through it. So if you like games like Elden Ring or yeah, well, it's a spectrum of games that it covers, like Elden Ring all the way up to like Final Fantasy 14. It's got a little bit something in there for you.
Yeah, I
And
think
I
you mentioned
want
too that I'm sorry. Wait, I'm sorry.
no say your point because I want to detour slightly, but go ahead. Say what you want to say.
No, I was to say that what's interesting. You mentioned SAO, of course, and obviously there's another series, Overlord. These are series where
Mm.
oftentimes in these fantasy worlds, the character is uber broken. In this series, the character is extremely talented and he's very good, but he's not. He literally gets like extremely handicapped in like the
Nerfed
second or third episode where he's
immediately.
like, and
Hmm.
he looks ridiculous. So essentially the fact that he's able to survive in this world any longer than he is because he is as talented and as skilled as he is. Otherwise, he pretty much have been killed off almost immediately. So it's fun to watch someone that is essentially playing a FromSoft game, a Soulsborne game, where it's extremely challenging. It was designed almost to kill you. You'd have to be uber broken just to survive, as opposed to being uber broken and kind of just surviving or hanging out in there like a reincarnated by a slime or whatnot.
It's the actual challenge, unlike
Yeah,
what Rimuru deals with. Because like
right. Yeah, that's fine.
He is God on earth at a
it's
certain
like,
point in that series.
oh no, you kill me, I'll respawn myself. You kill my friends, I'll respawn them too. sacrificing your army to do it. What?
Right. Yeah, because it gets to the point where it's like so. I mean, we talked about power creep. Obviously, it does eventually wear thin. Like, how much further can we go with this? We need some kind of a challenge. We need something to do. This show, at least right now, has found a way around that. You can just make a character very engaging and powerful. Yet there's, of course, he has limits. He can't do everything. He can't just own the world
Glass
with
cannon.
the snap of his fingers.
I feel like
Sorry, Tom,
Rimuru reminds me of back in the day when you're playing like GTA San Andreas.
With all the cheat
Otis,
codes?
no. You have the cheat code book next to you,
Mm-hmm.
because you go from skinny to swole. All of a sudden, you get the biggest guns, all the money, all the bullets. It's crazy. The best cars immediately. But yeah, to get into
I hate the game, but I know the lore of it. Yeah.
to redirect a little bit into one of these the standards or staples, I guess, of fantasy when it comes to reinventing yourself. How do you guys perceive that applying into this series in particular? I know for me in particular, I as long as with some of the characters, whenever there's a new area to explore, like I know when Senraku first found Rabbit how like excited he was just to figure out what was here to play around with. Every time he finds a new area in general, he's just like, oh man, there's new adventure here, there's new things to do, new things to see. And I think they make it a point of that whenever they are inside of a new area, they always make it a point to showcase all the life within that area. So when he went to, I can't remember the name of the area, but the area where there was the bees and that beetle having that whole discourse, and you get the beetle show in like the 5th or 6th episode, I think.
Only
something like that.
place I remember is Rabbituza or Rabbit Yakuza.
Yeah,
Rabbit
I know
Yakuza's
the
crazy.
areas. I can't remember the names.
That's what
of
it
these places.
was.
But yeah, that area, like usually whenever he goes to an area like that, there's this sense of joy he gets just exploring it. Because initially, when I first watched this series, I got a sense of, oh, does he even really like gaming for real? Because he just looks like he does not think positively on damn near any game he's playing. He's just good at them. This is the first time where like he's in a genuinely good AAA title that has people that care about the production of the game, and he's just having a blast exploring the entire world. And I thought, man, this is so relatable. I think that's part of, again, what we talked about, the relatability and the escapism of the genre and the series in general. This is why people will fall in love and endure this series and endure this genre.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Essentially it's evoking the same passion or love you feel when you are playing a video game or exploring something like that and for yourself. I can't remember the names of the locations, but I do remember when I got the Rabbituza, how it was even the show kind of highlights it, kind of hypes it up. It gives you big, huge, grand, sweeping shots of everything. You see these little citizens. It is very. It knows what it's doing. It's trying to create that sense of wonder again that we've lost so much, and sometimes it has to get ridiculous. I mean, it's a Rabbituza. That's about as ridiculous as it gets. But even along with, like you said, when he goes to different areas where he gets different types of weapons or whatnot, there's always. We playing Baldur's Gate 3. Always I played together before. I still get a great sense of like joy when I get a new weapon. I just, spoiler alert for the game, I killed this dude that was voiced by J.K. Simmons, and I just got some of his, and his I was so hyped. I was so hyped that I actually called my friend back home and on the East Coast, and I was gushing over the gear I got. Son Goku does the exact same thing. He'll go bananas over the gear he gets as far as the different types of blades, or if he goes to a blacksmith, it's an amazing uber blacksmith that's a one-eyed beastly rabbit guy, and he's like singing songs while hitting with his hammer. It's similar to Andre in Dark Souls series. You know what I'm talking about, Otis?
Mm-hmm.
It's like all those different types of things are things that gamers love experiencing. I can't go into the details as to why we love that, but this show is clearly aware of that. Like I said, it's paying homage to that. So it's indulgent.
They do a really good job of just connecting to the little things that the gamers like, right? Like Easter eggs and taking an outline of a certain thing that was really cool about a fantasy world and putting that into a game for them to explore. I mean, it's really relatable, very relatable show. They did a good job putting it together. Even the I guess eventual love interest, the I forgot what her character's name is in the game, but she's a monster in the game. But she's
like the Arsenal or something like that, or
I think it's something like that.
We're called a love interest.
Yeah, she's a monster in the game, but like the most timid person in real life. And I know so many girls like that for real.
Mm-hmm.
So
Call
Just
Felicia.
yeah, honestly, honestly,
Everybody
no,
say her name. They gotta say her
not
name.
really. She's not like quiet in real life. She just chooses when to inflict her
Right.
violence. But that's
Oh
a whole nother
God.
thing. But no, but the it's got a little bit of something for everybody. The team that he's building is pretty dope. The monk fighter chick is cold. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, you already know how I got down
Yeah,
with
she's
that
my
shit.
she's my favorite
yeah,
character. She's my favorite character.
Hey, I came off of Baldur's Gate with Monk. Hey, I'm Monk King right now, boy. I seen that. I was like, oh, say less. He got the Monk hands. It was crazy. I didn't because Baldur's Gate was my first turn. Well, I'm not gonna say it's my first turn-based game. But I played other ones like that, but it was the first game of that genre I had played. I didn't know Monk was such a staple in fantasy games like that until I
oh
played it,
yeah.
and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, so we can just throw hands for real, and that's the
No.
whole thing. Oh
The
man, say less.
biggest crime to Baldur's Gate is they didn't put the monk back in. I mean, not Baldur's Gate, to Diablo, because the
Well,
monk was my one of my
I
favorite
heard
classes
about
in
that.
Diablo 3. It was
I
like,
heard
why
about
would
that.
you take this out? Why
Yeah,
would you do it?
I heard about that. And a little spoil. I mean, I'm sure you all know this already too, but that was an influence as to why Konietzko and DiMartino did make Avatar: Last Airbender. They grew up
interesting.
playing tabletop and D&D games, and the monk was a class they used. That's why Aang is a monk.
So Otis, to kind of go off your point, which you mentioned with the Avatar stuff, funny enough, I got into a whole like debate with Khan from Tapping O Captain, and because he's really big on like Aang and Avatar. Aang was like the toughest. I went back just because we got into a heated debate about it. I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy, and I'm going back and rewatching all of Korra now, The Legend of Korra. Just the first season alone, Korra is dealing with demonic type shit. Like the first season alone, she's dealing with a guy that can take your bending away as a bloodbender, which we already saw how demon time bloodbending was in the first series, and the one
Right.
bloodbender could take out a whole fucking battalion of people. And he has an army of Tylees with him. And we've already
Literally,
seen
yeah, they're
how
Thai.
crazy Tylees are. And the only thing that could stop them being the metal benders, they went and developed a whole electric glove that will electrocute you inside of your armor. And then he still has planes that bomb people in rope. I'm like, Aang was not surviving any of this. The most Aang had to deal with
No,
was Zuko
dude,
for.
bro,
No,
bro,
no.
thank you. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the original Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think it is a
Right.
great series. Still some of the best writing I've seen. I'm going to stand on this. I still think it's got better story development than One Piece, but that's for another debate that I had on Facebook.
There is
Never
no
mind
debate.
that.
It's fact. There's no debate when it's
I'd
fact.
agree. I'd agree.
Yeah, yeah. But love the show. Korra's better, right? Like she's a better fighter. She had a better series. Like I'm sorry, like
Everything he
Avatar.
struggled with throughout the entire show, she mastered it in the first season. All the elements,
That was
the
the
Avatar
yeah.
state, and to
She
take away
had
people's
it when
bending
she
that
was
he.
5. She had it when she was 5.
But that was the point though. They were trying to make it. This is the next generation, so she had to be. She's
Right.
standing on the shoulders of those that came before. Also, literally, she is the next step in the next chain as far as because it's meant to be obviously based on
And
Buddhism.
it's the
So
way it's supposed to be. The next one's always stronger. Like
that's how it's
that's
supposed
just
to
what
be.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's supposed
That's
to be,
just how it
and also the
is.
world is getting much harsher. I know we are kind of somewhat not on an island since they've dropped Korra onto Netflix over the pandemic. A lot of people that
Mm-hmm.
were naysayers did come on board and kind of realize how good the show actually is. However, we know lots of people still prefer Aang and still prefer Avatar. That's fine. Uh, it's official here at Then and Now podcast, along with Cito. We do give The Last Airbender a full blown A+. But I know Otis and I give Korra an A++. It's just we're not saying that Avatar Aang is bad at all. It's just that the things that Korra deals with is so much hit, in our opinion, do hit so much harder.
And in
One
that
thing too is
scale, One Piece is an A. Just letting that know. One
no
Piece is an
One
A.
Piece is. I mean, One Piece by his legend,
Mm-hmm.
literally as epic as it gets. I am not here to knock Oda in any capacity. For all I know, he is a really good man, really hard worker. It's just that when I saw season 3 of Korra, and when I saw the way the season ends for a quote unquote kid show, is the main character is sitting in a wheelchair, slow cries. It's like that's what do we do? That's my God.
The trauma she's going through as a child soldier At 15, they're like,
Literally.
well, she's an adult. I'm like, Shawty is like 16 years old going through this.
She's
Shit.
16
Chill out.
in the third season. Yeah, 16.
Oh, and that's the third. So she was like 13, 14 in the first season, maybe.
Dealing with full-grown super bender assassins.
Assassins.
It's spirits and
Yes.
literal demons.
Literal demons. Also, she does. I mean, we're talking about that guy. Charlie was talking before about the guy who can take away your bending, right?
Amon, yeah.
Amon, yeah.
Yeah,
Amon actually does that to her.
Zahir.
That overwhelming trauma actually happens to her. She does lose her ability to bend for a while, and she's like freaking out. And she, of course, gets it back through basically through Aang and everything else. But it's
Like
she
3
actually
minutes
goes
later.
through trauma. Yeah, but could y'all imagine? Y'all, Charlie, you're really passionate about wrestling back in the day. You were a wrestler. Otis, you're passionate about basketball. Imagine if someone came up to you and just said, touched you on your forehead, and you couldn't play basketball or wrestle ever again. You'd be like, why? I mean, you go through severe trauma, severe depression. It happens. Trust me. As a person who deals with disability, that lost a lot of my abilities, that happens. It's the worst. And this show, it made it very digestible and relatable. I'm speaking again from my own experience. I know what that's like, and it really does hurt. I know we're diatribing like crazy. we went on a massive.
Hey, you brought it up. It was just recent beef I had, and I was like, yeah, bro, we got to talk about it for a second. The last thing I'll say on it.
It is
The last thing I'll say on it, we had never seen anybody like fight through bloodbending before. In the last episode, even without the avatar state, she is this through pure willpower and strength, air bending through being bloodbended. But he was like, how the fuck are you doing that when I'm controlling your muscles through your blood? And she's just like, willpower, nigga. I was like, okay. You just somehow mastered airbending all of a sudden and can control your body with your blood being controlled. Well, not mastered
one punch, the left hook.
She threw a combo. She threw a combination. She threw some nasty shit at him.
A couple jabs.
She was throwing like roundhouse kick upper. It was doing some crazy shit. But I digress.
If you ever get a chance though, Charlie, for the first fun of it, go and watch like those memes they have online of people getting blood bent, like they're in their body turns.
It was nasty work, and she's just like, you know what, fuck all that. Anyway,
I love it.
Man, shout out to Zahir and Kuvira because y'all did y'all thing in that show.
Kuvira,
yeah,
Kuvira is up there as like top tier. Kuvira is like. Yeah.
Kuvira was different.
God level. God tier.
Zahir was too.
Zahir, yeah, I mean, Zahir, people still love Zahir. People still like the girls are like, I'll go to prison to visit Zahir. I'll go to prison.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But to tie that back into our main topic as far as like fantasy. Now, I think the last Airbender in that world has a sense of fantasy. Now it's different. Yeah, it's different than like the stereotypical fantasy thing with like the fairies and elves and goblins and all that.
Mole bears, bro.
Yeah, polar bear dogs and things of that nature.
Yeah, and I think
lion turtles. And I think that's also another extent to the staple we talked about earlier in regards to the sense of wonder you have when you're exploring this world, because things are so vibrant, things are so different. Even in like the scary things, like the last Airbender season where Aang and Zuko are meeting the twin dragons. Initially, you're like, oh, these dragons are intimidating. And then you see the beauty of them going through learning how to bend from dragons. Mm-hmm. It's stuff like that where I'm like, okay, if you're going to do fantasy right, you need to make sure your world is interesting, vibrant, and enjoyable. Now, the question I have for you guys, more specifically Otis, because he's the GOAT at this, give me when you see fantasy used wrong. What are some tropes that fantasy is used in negative ways that aren't correct, in your opinion?
Fantasy gone wrong. So if you go to Crunchyroll right now, you type F on your search key, Fairy Tail should show up.
Oh my god!
And just like everything that they do, don't do that, right? So I mean, no, that's not. Fairy Tail isn't the worst thing on the planet. Yes, it is. But like, I mean, of course. When you're getting to the point of like just being hypertrophy of like, super protagonists, they're overpowered and just blitzing through things because he's just inherently OP. I don't think that's ever a super fun thing to go with long term. It can work in stints depending on what type of show you do. So like, I mean, it's a caveat to a good show. I mean, for a second. Overlord handles that a bit well because they find ways to raise stakes using the characters around the OP character and then come back to the OP character. Right. You can do that, but just having a super strong protagonist that was gifted from conception, whether it be like from isekai or birth or to Sungjin woo it up. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you do to get your power up, if you're just immediately just OP over everything, I mean that's outside of fantasy too, but within fantasy it's even worse because it makes the stakes of the world that you're building feel like they don't exist, in my opinion.
Exactly. That's what bothers
Mm.
me.
Um,
Yeah, that's what bothers me. They call it the cardboard effect.
hmm. um Also, I mean, something that I feel that should be a little bit more balanced in a lot of fantasy, and even like some of my favorites don't do this perfectly well, is like power scaling, and
Hmm.
making you understand like, okay, this character is strong because of this, so this newer character is weaker because of that. Like I mean, just having a definitive way of like the hierarchy of power within your verse and having it make sense in a way that isn't just like immaculate conception. I think that's really important. Because I mean like a better word, that's yeah, trying to think what else is a bad trope in fantasy. um
So when you mentioned right there the immaculate conception, but also the power creep. So one thing that did, I know we walked up this before, with the Nen system. The reason that works in a lot of ways is similar to it with JoJo. Depending regards to your opinion of JoJo, is that it's not set up that it's like, oh, if your power level is 100, if someone's level is 110, they're better than you. It's no, it's like we have different strategies or tactics based off of our power system. So like
mhm,
with Nen, if you are enhanced or whatnot, depending on how you manipulate or use that, you can maybe beat this person over here, but you can get beat by this character over here, and that character that beat you can get destroyed by the other character over here that you couldn't beat. It's a system. If you can find a way to have your world building set up things that everyone on their own plane has the ability to be as powerful as they can in their own right, it makes it a lot more fun and more interesting to watch, as opposed to just that your power level is all that matters. And if you once you are the top, you're the top and can be beaten. It's just again, it becomes too simple, and and you too predictable too.
On a similar vein, I will discuss too, like when it comes to like power systems in fantasy or whether it be video games or whatnot, it's the complexity and the diversity as far as kind of to Ethan's point, B doesn't equal C, and so on and so forth. You can have a skill set that may be perceived as different than the meta, that may be more difficult to utilize, but that skill set can make you and give you an overwhelming advantage over some other skill set. So again, for my example, part of the reasons why I enjoyed the monk build so much is that a build that it doesn't have any weapons at all, you would think like, okay, that may be a little more difficult due to the fact that the weapons in this game have these buffs that are ridiculous that can give you incredibly strong feats going forward in the game. But this build, the way it works, okay, cool. If I can't hit you as strong as this other weapon can, maybe I'll hit you more times. Or maybe I'll focus on hitting you one time really hard, but I can outmaneuver you as well. It's things like that that I'm like, okay, cool. If you don't know how to use the build, it may be a little bit more difficult to utilize for certain people, but it also can be very effective on certain builds. I think when one fight in Boulder's Gate in particular, the Gethric Thorn build that you were talking about, Ethan, he has an ability or an attack that makes you drop your weapons no matter where you are in
Yeah,
the map. Like you
yeah,
can use at range. And it was difficult when I was using for my companions because like a lot of them I gave them like weapons and that was based around how they attack. For me, I was just like powering through that shit. That didn't really have no effect on me because I didn't really have any weapons still. I was still hitting them the same way I was from the start of the battle.
it's a
So
Gojo
it's
hand.
things
Yeah,
like that, and you see that in different fantasy worlds, rather that be the Last Airbender to Shangri la Frontier specifically, because he's different for the fact that he's not able to wear armor on his upper body for real, or that
yeah,
he's not using like these. Like you see other characters in the show use these huge weapons, rather it be like broadswords, staffs, things of that nature. But he's like, okay, I'm gonna go with these two dual wielded short swords, and this is how I'm rocking. This is how I'm coming for real.
yeah.
And
And
he
he
uses that
doubles
in
down on
different
that too.
variations.
that's
Sorry.
the
Mm-hmm.
other half of the appeal to me, because I mean he picks the most difficult way to make his character function in the game, and that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what I do all the time. Like, oh, that build is the opposite of the meta, and it's gonna be really hard to beat the meta with that thing. Sign me up. That's me, and that's what Sunraku does in the show. So
Yeah, because they don't call it this. It's meant to be basically what he's doing in the FromSoft universe. There's a level. They have all the different types of starting classes, not classes, but essentially starting type of
He's a
builds you
barbarian
start
class,
with.
yeah.
And there's the bottom level build is called Waste of Skin. It's where you start off naked, homeless, and with like a really short rusty dagger, essentially. And that's basically what Son Goku is. That's what I've seen Otis pick that class before we played in Elden Ring. So that's what you're saying. I want every challenge possible thrown at me. And to Son Goku's credit, though, he did plan on trying to get better armor and do different types of things. However, he spoiler alert, we don't get too far into this. You haven't seen the show. He challenges something he shouldn't challenge and takes a massive L, and the L is permanent. It pretty much messes him up, so he gets cursed on his body, so he can't really focus on armor and everything else. Because of that, he doubles down his agility and his intelligence and everything else, so he actually can still hit himself in other fights, which is really well done. I thought really smart. One other thing I want to go off of, piggyback off what Dev just said, Charlie just said. For example, in BG3, I only fought this character, what's the J.K. Simmons once. Because I was able to, my character is a criminal who has all kinds of sleight of hand and persuasion and deception, and I was able to outsmart him in the encounter before and had him pretty much just give up. I did that most of the times. I have big encounters with big bosses. I will basically convince them to kill themselves or kill their own people or just quit or join me or something like that. I will find a way to kind of avoid the fight if I can sometimes, and that's because it's based off that build. My build is meant to be a charlatan or a criminal. That's what he does. He talks about other situations. Dev is meant to be a tank. He's used to use throwing hands. That's what he wants to do. So and I'm pretty sure Otis, you're a ranger, probably an assassin or whatnot. That's the fun of these types of games in these different types of worlds. Again, it's wish fulfillment for us. It's meant to be where you get to be what you want, what you wish you could be. Essentially, I wish I could talk myself out of any situation. I'm sure Charlie wish he could throw hands with gods. I'm sure I wish he could rob all kinds of god tier level people too. So that's
if I had the archery skill that I had in Destiny in real life, bro.
I'm gonna end Chicago. He'd be ruling Chicago underworld.
You see him do some modern day Chicago getting sniped with an arrow. What is going on? What happened in arrow? A bow and arrow in Chicago.
But he is straight up. Who was the mob boss in Chicago during the '60s? I'm blanking on his name. He got arrested on tax fraud. You know what I'm talking about?
Really? You talking about Capone? What else?
Capone, yeah. Black Capone over here. That I think though, are there any more like staples in your opinion that you would maybe it's not a requirement for fantasy, but something that you see repeated in most fantasy mediums that you feel like makes it shine above other genres, really? We've been through a good bit. We think we've been through most of the main stuff, but I feel like there's some subtlety that we're missing here in the conversation.
That people like. So we're talking about the positives now. I mean, of course, you like to have magic. Like, just the word magic is gonna draw to a lot of people. Even if you have characters that don't use magic within your game. Just the existence of it, or your not your game, but whatever your piece of content is, whether it's a game,
right?
A show, a book. Oh, well, that's a whole nother episode getting into fantasy books. But yeah, it's having some type of magic. Is everybody wants to have that in real life? Like if you can put out a post on any social media, would you rather have magic or not? 99.9% people are going to pick magic, right? So,
yeah, 100%. And like you said too, if you're in a world that at least has magic, we've all seen this show Supernatural. A really big point of that was that in that world they're in, all kinds of stuff happens, but it's very much magic based. And was it the 6th or 7th season, y'all, where they do a hard fourth wall break and they end up they jump through a world. Somehow they end up in a world without magic. It's like they go outside of their own
world
into
in the
our
real
world.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's pretty much they're like, this is horrible. This world has no magic. What are we doing here? This is terrible. It's like, yeah, even though the main characters Sam and Dean themselves cannot use magic, it's so much they would rather exist in a world that at least had it. It's just so much better for whatever reason,
Seems like I can actually be a lawyer now. I want to do that shit. I thought I wanted to. I want to do that. I in addition to that, another thing I want to throw out there is the importance of the side character. I feel as though for me, especially playing through Baldur's Gate and even a good bit through Shangri la Frontier, while the main character or myself is interesting, I love exploring, especially in Baldur's Gate, the side missions that gave me insight on why my side characters are who they are. And I love walking them through their character arcs of potentially making them more evil or potentially making them more in line with positivity, et cetera, et cetera. 'Cause I love, again, the sociologist in me loves seeing how people tick and what experiences help you form into who you are. Because I'm a big believer in nurture over nature. I don't think you're naturally who you are. I think you have these environments or things that help you develop into who you are. So seeing those in fantasy tends to be really interesting to me. And when it's done really well, it because I think that's the key. That's the show and tell of a really good piece of fantasy content is when your fandom are fans over all the side characters and the main character is like a afterthought in that verse. Because people just love and connect with these side characters so much more, even though they're not the main attraction there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's I'm 100% on board with that with companions. I feel like I'm talking too much. I'm sorry, y'all, but I love this stuff. But I completely agree that companions, for example, in the Baldur's Gate 3, that universe. Like, I mean, we all have massive hard-ons for Karlach. I think she's pretty much one of the best characters. She's technically a side piece, or not side piece. She's
crazy. Side piece is crazy.
Otis nodded. He said, "I agree." He said, "Oh no, wait, I can't agree." On film, I mean, caught on film. No, she's a companion, right? Companion, and she's an amazing character. Her story is amazing. It works really well. I think also it happens like we talked before about old girl in Shangri la Frontier. She the purple haired, I can't remember her name. Damn it, the purple haired badass.
Arthur Pencil Dragon or Pencil Gun?
Is that her name? Yeah.
Arthur Pencil Gun. Yeah.
She's not, the main character is cool. We love him, but the side character. She's even more engaged in lots of ways. You think of old school. There are so many people that prefer Vegeta over Goku. Remember, Vegeta is very much the Lancer. He's a side character. He's not the main character in the story. His story is 100 times more compelling than Goku's. Toph, who doesn't show up until literally about halfway through the entire run. Whatever that person just said. Toph is still epic. Toph is goat cheese and then some. So I think also what happens is that with side characters, you can explore things that the main character, if the main character is meant to be more lawful good or something, the side character can have can be a little rough around the edges, which can be more fun too.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, in certain shows, the side character would actually carries the show. Like, going back to Overlord, going to One Punch Man, right? Like, I mean, that's another fantasy in a completely different direction show.
Still fantasy.
Because they got, monsters, aliens, lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. But yeah, the side characters are everything, right? Like, Genos is the reason that, like, some of those seasons are hyped, because he's, like, trying his hardest against this one random monster, and then Saitama finally gets there, and...
I don't know what they captured that sound he did, but yeah, that's perfect. And also the episode, like the best episode in season 1 of One Punch, is the episode with the Sea King, sea monsters there, and the Bike Man. I can't remember.
Captain
his name. He's not called the Bike Man, but it's all about his struggle trying to fight that character, fight that guy, and he had a much more compelling story than Saitama did. Essentially, and Saitama does show up eventually, but it's like seeing what that Bike Man story is against this monster. It's like, yeah, that's compelling stuff.
Yeah, shout out to Moomin Rider, aka Captain Ruthless. Yeah.
I'm an old man. My memory is terrible. I forget my own name half the time.
Yeah.
Hey man, we love you anyway.
Oh, yeah. Love y'all too.
Yeah, the Moomin Rider is definitely a much beloved character, even though he did nothing.
Like King of Elves, but
no, that's Rock Lee.
Rock Lee. You're right, because Rock Lee is also a side
not
character.
Too much. Not too much. Moving.
Also, the monk class basically. Lee is a monk essentially.
Yeah, because he has no. He can't do any magic though. No magic.
That's one quick tangent. Another quick tangent. Kind of in the vein of Naruto, something in going to Boruto, which is why I'm starting to get back into the hype of Boruto. Because I was reading a interview where it's Kishimoto, right? Or who's the writer, the creator of that?
Kishimoto.
He was discussing like his kind of to Otis's point about the aliens. He was like, I don't know why the fuck I did that and why I moved into like the mech world, which is why if you watch a good bit of Boruto, it's straight back to taijutsu, and even characters that have these mech powers like a Naruto and a Sasuke don't really use them as much. The show is like pure taijutsu and pure hands. Even Boruto, like he gets this crazy. I'm not going to give it away. Well, if you read the manga, I'm not going to give it away. He gets this crazy like jutsu that essentially just enhances his taijutsu even further instead of just giving him a blaster on some Dragon Ball shit. And if you're asking anybody, if you're asking anybody what like their favorite fights of Naruto were, it's going to be one of the Naruto and Sasuke fights probably, or the Kakashi Obito. So all the fights that involve the most taijutsu. And I'm happy to see.
Well, even Madara has his hands in Palooza. For like the first 5 minutes of that fight, he comes out that he's throwing hands like crazy.
All the best
I
moments.
said Neji versus Kitamaru though.
Oh, I thought you said Madara.
Oh yeah. And again, I think that having something like that to where you don't have this overwhelm, kind of to the point we spoke on earlier as far as like different skill sets. There is a meta, obviously, where okay, I can just have the most chakra and out chakra you, or I can have this ability that like I can stop all your chakra points from like single touches and slowly break you down. And there are a plethora of characters in the first parts of Naruto that operated like that, and now it's getting back to forming Boruto now. And you could argue that world's somewhat fantasy to a similar extent.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the interesting thing about fantasy is the broadness of it to me. Of I can incorporate. Again, we talked about stuff from the last Airbender that incorporated a lot of Hindu mythology into that show with reincarnation and all kinds of ways that they do that, into Naruto where it's a lot more Buddhist, and all these different types of cultures and influences were able to create these melting pots of interesting content.
The fantasy genre is gigantic, right? Like you understand everything from My Little Pony to Berserk is fantasy. Like everything in between that. Like
think about what you just said. Think about the fact that those are in the same, technically the same genre. That is alarming.
Fantasy is rap at this point. This is just rap music at this point. You got to have a million subgenres for this one fat ass genre that's just developed over time.
Yeah, 100%. And it's fun. You mentioned. I'm glad you brought up Berserk. That's my favorite manga of all time. For those who know, it's just like it is so vast within its own series. If you look at the Golden Age arc to like even the Black Swordsman arc to later on when it gets to actually have like insane like broken level castle, it pretty much is like a full blown like old school medieval fantasy type of thing where it has massive dragons and everything in the world. It's so vast. Like you're saying, it's fun that gives up fantasy. Essentially, it gives you a blank slate to create anything and everything, as long as you can find some kind of a way to tie it all together. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think we're starting to get to a wrapping point. Unless you guys have any other significant points on the discussion that you want to bring forth.
Yeah, just when you are starting your story and you are thinking of things to like compare it to, just like don't be fairy tale. Like just there's so many other options. Just like don't do that one, and you're already on the right track.
Sure. One thing I'll say is that you can have fun with. I think even if it's a fantasy story, everything from My Hero to Asta in Black Clover to one of my favorite, maybe my favorite manga, of course, of all time, Solo Leveling. You can still have a character. It's fun to watch them go from zero to hero, to watch their journey of becoming more and more powerful. Sure, they can become broken later on. I get that, but it's fun for the audience to get more invested in the character if you let us see their journey, take us along the journey with them, so to speak.
Yeah, that's included in Don't Be Fairy Tale, because Natsu was broken, then got more broken, and then got more broken.
Asking you a goddamn thing.
And then kept getting more broken because it just lightning is fire too. Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
The last Airbender did it.
But they say it's not. They don't say that they're one and the same. They do say they're two different elements. Yeah.
Hey man, every other element they gotta have a little bit of that thing inside of it when it comes to blood, metal, Fire and lightning. That's all I'm saying. Hey, they did it. They did it.
It's fine. Yeah, I
But
haven't seen
blood
But-
was part of waterbending.
Hmm.
Blood was part of waterbending.
Yeah.
No, he's saying that both every other.
Yeah, that was my point. Was that
has
like it's a part of it to some form or fashion.
forms.
But yeah, man, this has been a dope discussion. I think this is gonna how we're gonna try to approach our reviews or just discussions going forward. Obviously, for people watching, we're gonna have like our traditional review of like a new piece of content. But I want to kind of use this pre-recorded version of the show to dive into shows, series, content that may be a little bit older that, you know, kind of represent more of the then in the Then and Now podcast to kind of break some of that stuff down and have those dialogue. Because we kind of do it inherently anyway up until this point. But I want to make sure we're more intentional about pointing in the right direction and let the dogs loose, for better reference. But before we ready to get up out of here, do you guys want to shout out anything or kind of give any closing remarks before we ready to get up out of here?
Shout out to our boy Cito. Sorry, my bad, Cito. I had a lunch and I passed out earlier today. My bad.
Oh man.
Go to blur.com.
Blur.com. I'll agree. I concur, my brother. I concur. Go check out blur.com. Also other sister and brother content creators we work with, being tapping, no capping. Dr. Kaori Knight actually is doing a lot of content and writing a lot of articles for blur.com. So we as a network have a lot of dope people connected to us. So if you like us, you're more than likely going to like the other people we work with as well. Professor E. Key, the comics, Ethan Murphy, and this.
You're listening to the Then and Now podcast.
We'll see you guys later.